A very warm welcome to you all for joining us today. My name's David Hewen, and on behalf of the team at Garrett Publishing, we're so grateful you've chosen to spend some time with Emma and Alice this evening. We at Garrett choose to begin all our webinars and events by acknowledging the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples as the first peoples of Australia, and we acknowledge their ongoing connection to the land. I join you from the lands of the Wurundjeri people here in Naarm, now known as Melbourne. I pay my respects to their elders, both past and present, recognising their wisdom of the land and cultural knowledge. Before we get started in earnest, there is a few administrative matters. We've got the chat function is open for you. So throughout the evening, if you'd like to make some comments or some questions, feel free to do so. Only the speakers, our panelists and myself can see those comments. We do that for privacy reasons. For those seeking accreditation for your professional development, please provide your email and your school name in the chat. Preferably use the email with which you registered for the sessions. Again, only I and the speakers can see your details. The hours or the hour for tonight will be accredited. This is the fourth session. So those of you who have joined us seeking accreditation, you'll receive your accreditation for all four sessions, all the hours that you've put in for these. The events are recorded, and we will have a video to you next week. We'll do our best to answer your questions and respond to your comments throughout tonight's session. We do aim to get us through as many as we possibly can, but please don't take it personally if we can't answer your very question. We aim to finish at about 8 o'clock Melbourne time. It's 7:04 Melbourne time at the moment. Our fourth session in our Ecology webinar series for 2025. And tonight, we explore a synodal response to Laudato Si. Those who have joined us previously will know Alice Carwardine well. Alice works in the mission and formation team at the Edmund Rice Christian Brothers Oceania province. She holds a master's degree in theology with a focus on eco-theology. This reflects her passion for the intersection between faith and the care for our planet. She's a trained teacher in physics and the study of religion and has run many workshops for many schools over the years. Previously, Alice was the National Coordinator for Caritas Catholic Earth Care Program and was a member of the Laudato Si Action Plan working group, collaborating with the Dicastery for promoting human integral development to implement Pope Francis's wonderful encyclical. She was also a member of the Synod writing team for the Brisbane Archdiocese, and she has a milestone birthday coming up this weekend, she just told me. So, Alice, we're so pleased to have you tonight, and put on hold the big celebration as well.
Thank you, David. Cool. Well, before I introduce Emma, we'll just do a very brief acknowledgement because Emma and I are both on Yagara and Turrbal country here in Brisbane or Mianjin, on opposite sides of Warra, the Brisbane River, and but we have worked very closely together in the past. So I'm very glad that Emma could join us tonight because she's a wealth of wisdom and a beautiful human. I thought, just by way of a very short reflection to begin our evening together, I would share just a little bit about Synod in general before we move on to how it relates to Laudato Si. And I'm taking a bit of a reading from a book that a friend of mine was involved in writing. Her name is Libby Blom, and she was working for Mercy Partners at the time, and it's called The Synodal So if you go to the Mercy Partners website, I know it's not a Garrett publication, but it's a really good introduction to how Synod can work, not just in the context of sort of the institutional structures of the church, but in lots of other environments as well, which is really beneficial. And it says the language of synodality is unfamiliar to most people. Its Greek roots mean journeying together. Pope Francis has described synodality as an expression of the church's nature, form, style, and mission, and a place where all can feel at home and participate. Rather than a new church doctrine or policy, it is an ecclesial sensibility, a willingness to listen, dialogue, share, so all the faithful might assume their co-responsibility for the mission. It requires a prayerful and humble openness to the Holy Spirit being the principal protagonist. Synodality is not an organizational process, but a fundamental ecclesiology. The ecclesial vision of synodality calls for a change of attitude and culture within the Church of Australia so that all persons are welcomed and recognised. It then talks about, a little bit later on, the importance of diversity and solidarity. And I think it speaks to or refers to something that's very relevant to Laudato Si, which is, it says it is hard to build a culture of encounter in which we meet as people with a shared dignity. Within a throwaway culture, which regards the elderly, the unemployed, the disabled, and the unborn as surplus to our well-being. Before discussing how we can overcome some of our breaches and divisions in our society to build peace and the common good, we need to consider the isolated conscience which acts as a major obstacle to the union of hearts and minds. As we know, the throwaway culture is something that's mentioned in Laudato Si and doesn't just relate to our physical resources, but also to people. So I hope that helps to get your mind thinking in the way of synodality for this evening. I am going to now, I'm going to get Emma to introduce herself because she knows her bio a lot better than I do, and it's very long. And I'm just conscious, I know that there's things going on in the chat regarding professional development and also the references that are going in there. So keep continuing to check that out. So Emma, please introduce yourself with your full title.
That my title is ridiculously large for such a small woman. You can't see on Zoom, but I'm only 5'1", and this title is just it. So I am the executive officer for the Catholic Justice and Peace Commission, and I'm also the project officer for the Justice, Ecology and Peace in the inclusion unit of the Archdiocese. So together, I pretty much look after justice, ecology and peace for the Archdiocese in a nutshell. And I've been doing this job now for about 3 years. And before that, I worked in education and in youth ministry for 20 odd years. And but I'd always had an absolute passion for this. Laudato Si speaks to my heart, to my Franciscan heart. And I try and live it and now try and share it with the community of the Archdiocese. So, is that good enough, Alice?
Absolutely. Absolutely it is. Okay, so we're going to zoom into some questions now, which I've been talking at length with Emma about in preparation for tonight. But please, as we go through, if you have any other questions, as David said, please put them in the chat and we will try our best to get to as many as possible. So for those who aren't familiar with Emma or the Brisbane Archdiocese, a few years ago, the Brisbane Archdiocese was the first, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, Emma, but I think it was the first archdiocese in the world to develop a complete Laudato Si Action Plan. So for those who don't know, what that is, can you tell us a bit about it and what does that mean for the Archdiocese?
So in 2022, we launched our first action plan, and it is just a plan of action to be hearing both the cry of the earth and the cry of the poor. And it is structured around the 7 goals of the Laudato Si Action Platform. We've used that as a structure to think about the different ways we can action this plan. Since then, we've reiterated with a new plan. So we're in the process of writing our 3rd plan. And each time we're learning and growing. The idea being the plan holds you accountable, it gives you direction, and it gives you the opportunity to really do the work you need to do in your community. So, and now my role is to inspire, people in our Archdiocese to write their own plans. And yeah, I couldn't recommend it more highly for getting action happening.
Yeah. And I think, you and I have both seen some of the great work of the parishes that are doing really well. Like, I know for me, Stafford comes to mind as one of our star parishes in the diocese, which are who are doing some really, really great work. They also have a website. If people who are part of a parish want to go and have a look at, that it's really detailed and has a lot of some like really great stuff on there. So that would be another great resource that you can tap into. So Emma, you and I had must have been in 2023 or early 2024, we both received the invitation to be part of the Archdiocesan Synod writing team. So Emma and I both worked together as part of that. And the whole synod process for the Archdiocese of Brisbane happened in 2024. And it was made very clear early on to us that the Brisbane Archdiocese was going to take inspiration from the plenary council degrees to be able to sort of, I guess, make it easier for different parts of the synod to take form. And Emma and I were delegated the task of Decree 8, which is the decree on integral ecology and conversion for the care of our common home. I think that's it. Again, another really long title. So I just wanted to, if Emma, if you could just share a little bit about that, more detail about that process for everyone. And I
think, the first part of that process was to really understand synodality, and we went through our own process of formation, learning about conversations in the spirit, the concept that we're enlarging the tent and listening to people that don't normally get heard. And it was really inspiring. It was like, oh, okay, this is going to be digging deeper than we've already done. We acknowledged the listening that had happened during the plenary, but we were also identifying voices that hadn't been taken into consideration for that. Even though we'd been really thorough with that in Queensland, I felt like South East Queensland participated in the plenary really well. We still started to really look for voices that hadn't been heard or recognised. And there was a person in charge of that, Elizabeth Fort, to do a listening process and conversations in the spirit, specifically with areas that hadn't been heard. And you and I did the same thing as well. We sort of went out on our own and did a little bit of research and listening, conversations in the spirit. And then we discerned all that information. And I remember sitting down with you and saying, okay, from all this information, what are the things we're going to focus on? And there was, the hard thing was to put our own agendas to the side and to really hear. And we were really clear about that. We had to really hear what people were saying. And we highlighted 3 main areas, being formation, ministry, and accountability, really, auditing and measuring. That were the 3 areas we really focused. So we had to discern. We wrote you started with the draft and then we went backwards and forwards. I was looking the other day how many drafts we did. Yeah. And then it got sent off to another area that said, no, we want you to fix this and this and this. Although they kind of liked our draft, thank goodness. And then you go to a synod and you present it. And, we got to try and there was about 160 people in that room, and I was very aware that we had to try and do an eco-conversion in 10 minutes, which was no mean feat because not everyone in that room was on page. And so we had to really pack a punch in that 10 minutes, sell it. Then they vote, and they didn't like our accountability section. They said, no, some people thought it was too much and some people thought it was too little and not broad enough. And so we had an hour to rewrite and then re-present and then but that is the process of synod. Like, it was really important for us to hear that. I'd find, and thankfully they liked our second version, and then the Archbishop took it, and then he changed it again. So there was lots of little bits and pieces that he'd heard during the day, or he felt moved by the Spirit. And so I think, in summary, it was very much, we were just one of the cogs of the many cogs in this system. And we really tried to stay true to that, because otherwise we wouldn't be synodal. So we had to really make sure that we first listened, that we discerned, that we worked as a team, and then we had a whole room of people that we had to work with, as well as an archbishop, and to hold our position lightly in that process.
At
the same time, taking the responsibility.
I think, the responsibility was huge on the whole writing team. And I think, it was really, I have quite fond memories of all of us writers on being across kind of two tables at the synod, and we all sort of were bonding, and because we'd sit until the actual 4 days that we had of the synod voting, we'd only really had 1 or 2 meetings beforehand where we'd gotten together, so we hadn't spent a whole lot of time together unless we were working on the same decree, which Emma and I were. So that was really nice to be able to sit with everyone and talk about the different processes, and be able to support each other when each other's actions came up, and really affirm one another. And that was really a really great thing. And I think a lot of my other really fun memories were of that listening and dialogue process. I'm sorry, Emma, but I am going to ask a question about that. So do you have any sort of standout highlight moments in specifically that part, in before we even got to the tables, like of when we sat down with people and we're listening to what everyone had to bring and had to say? What were some of the things that you either enjoyed or that stood out to you in that time?
Yeah, I've always got a soft spot for the people who've been working in this space for a very long time, but feel like they're not being heard. There's people I work with in parishes who are in their 90s or 80s and have been working in this space, before I was born, and and they're still in the fight to try and make the world a better place and to look after this beautiful environment we've been given, and to enable them to be heard and to have an impact on what we were doing was really lovely and really inspiring for them. I've got a rule. And in the same space, it was good to get the kids. I really loved, I liked both sides. So, I've got kids myself. I must admit, I was even like drilling their own friends, and any contact, I had in school groups or that kind of thing, to get their voice heard. Again, they often feel like it's their world and no one's listening to them. So to make them feel empowered was also really important. But I think also sometimes it's just the different areas. A lot of people feel like they're a bit powerless in this area. We see how the earth's being treated. It's understandable, but it was lovely to empower people with a voice.
I think especially with the kids stuff, because we both know Elizabeth Fort really well, who did the consultations. I'm pretty certain she was the one that did the one with the kids, and you could just see how gentle she was with them in just letting them to speak and to share what they thought. And some of their comments, I can't remember any exactly, but they were quite hopeful. And I think it was such a different for me, especially, when we were talking with people who had been there for longer and were maybe a little bit disenfranchised, to see the kids that had so much hope. And it was just, it was a surprise and a bit of a nice kind of balance. And it was such a lovely space to be working in at the time.
I'm also, can I raise, there was a slight complication in this thing, because we had a Laudato Si plan already. That was a complication with our process and what we discerned, because we were told very clearly that we couldn't put things that were in our plan. So we'd only written a plan about a year or so beforehand, and they sort of said, all those things that we think are really important, you can't put that in there, because if it gets voted out, then you can't do it. So that was a complication we had, and an unfortunate one, I think, in the respect that we were, I don't know, I feel like in some respects we didn't need to be as concerned as we were. But that is a complication when you've got a plan and a synod happening in one after the other.
Yeah, because I remember we were sitting down at like right at the beginning, and they said, we had to write actions, and we were like, we have a whole plan of actions. It's already done. But yes, that was I remember thinking that was particularly tricky. I do think though the uh actions that we ended up with that were in the synod part, I felt tapped into a number of the other decrees a lot better, as opposed to the actual Laudato Si Action Plan, which is very like, this is
Yeah.
what this agency will do, and this is what this agency will do related to this goal, whereas it was a bit more, yeah. We've had a question come through from, I think it's Mary, who says, do all the schools as well as parishes have involvement?
In the synod?
I'm assuming, yeah, in the synod.
Okay.
Yeah.
So no, we didn't
No.
do an exhaustive listening process because we thought the plenary covered most of it. So the idea being is we did do, of course, some listening beforehand, or Elizabeth did a lot, but not all the schools were involved and not all the agencies. It was trying to get voices that hadn't been heard before, and that was about it. That's my understanding, Alice. What do you think?
Yeah, I think like I remember when I was in schools at the time when the plenary was happening, we did our own listening and discernment thing, and that opportunity wasn't available for the Brisbane Synod. We very much, I remember, Emma, you and I sat down at one point really early on, and sort of we had a list of people that we said to Elizabeth and said, okay, these are the types of people that we want to listen to, or that we think we need to hear on this particular issue. Because like, bearing in mind, we had all the plenary information there as well. So we consulted with that and checked what was some common themes that we could draw on as well. So that was also happening at the same time. In saying that, though, I do know that in other archdioceses it does work differently. So not every archdiocese or archdiocese is taking the same route with the synodal process. Some of them are doing much more extensive consultation, all of those sorts of things. I do think, though, what was great to see was the opportunity for at the synod tables where the voting was happening. I think, was it the priests of every parish, I think, was invited, but they could also send a lay representative or something. So they got like a couple of spots at the tables that they could fill. So that was really good. So it wasn't just clergy that were voting on any particular thing. There was a really nice balance in the room of a lot of different people from different agencies and different places, and we were all mixed together. Everyone was, yeah.
Yeah, the planning into that was intense. So they really made a point of having a variety of ages, cultures, experience. It was, astounding. There were very young people in the room, but, people very old, and very different. We had people from very conservative Catholic to very evangelical, and we were all together. And that was really apparent. And there was a respect. There was a sense that we are diverse in this room and we're not going to agree, and we've got to listen. This is an opportunity to do this well and to model the kind of world we want to live in. And there was, because I know personally I had some, particularly, I sort of empathized more in the reconciliation space where we had people quite stridently against it and having difficulty with it at tables where there was First Nations people, and that was challenging. We had to make sure that people felt safe, but at the same time make sure that everyone felt heard regardless of their opinion. And that is tricky. That's getting in the mud. As Pope Francis would say, you need to get in the mud.
Yeah.
We were in it.
Yeah, we were. Very much. I think at the end we all had some of, as Catherine Macaulay would say, you got to the end and you felt like you needed to take your boots off, like your mud-covered boots needed to come off right at the end because it was a lot of hard work, but very fulfilling, very, very rewarding process. And we must mention Steph Jorna, who was our leader throughout that whole thing, and she's just come back from Rome. So yeah, she's really great.
And Tim.
And Tim, Bishop Tim as well. And then he left us straight away. Like his announcement, oh, that was so funny. Right at the end of the 4 days, his announcement came that he was moving to Broome, and we all just sat there like, oh my gosh, like we were exhausted. And anyway, yeah. Fran's just written in a question, how are you combining Jubilee year in synodality initiatives of Laudato Si? Oh, good question.
I think synodality has just infused into everything we do. You'll find the majority of our work in the Archdiocese includes conversations in the Spirit, and it's opened, like I work for the inclusion unit, so we are always been really aware of broadening our tent. That's our motto. But I've noticed other factions within our agency to really open up to who they're listening with, and it's become far broader, that initiative, not just for the inclusion team. But so it's sort of infused, but the Jubilee and the Laudato Si, I think it's that concept of hope, really. And being pilgrims of hope, I think,
and I remember at the Mass, like we had the Season of Creation Mass, there was a lot of hope symbolism during that. Like that to me felt very Jubilee in that space. Yeah.
And of course peace, like with the theme of peace of creation during Season of Creation. I'm just trying to think. It's just the major themes. We sort of join them together, which they fit naturally.
Yeah, and maybe this is a little bit controversial of me to say, but I have noticed, particularly this year in Brisbane compared to some other places around Australia, in terms of celebrating the Jubilee, there's been a lot that's gone on in the Brisbane Archdiocese this year, with Mark Coleridge retiring, and Shane McKinley coming in. And I know there has been some Jubilee celebrations, but it's almost like we've got so many different things happening. It's just been kind of in the mix, like it's so maybe those ties haven't been there in a hugely strong way as they have been in other places. But yeah, it's definitely a good thought though, to be thinking about how especially as we're coming to the end of the Jubilee, about hope. And I know, like, for friends of mine at the moment who are over in Brazil with the COP that's happening right now, a lot of them are saying how hope-filled they are feeling, which feels very much in the spirit of Jubilee, which is good. I
wonder whether it's because so many people have been doing pilgrimages to the Vatican, and they come back talking about synodality. Like that seems to be the thing.
They do.
Like that is their big thing when they come back. That's the thing they're saying. The Pope just keeps talking about synodality. Like anyone, we've had a lot more people go to the Vatican in the last 12 months than we've ever had. That's there was a crew that just came back recently, and they said the three things the Pope was very energetic about was synodality, of course, preaching the gospel, and Laudato Si. And they said there is his big target areas. I would add their peace as well. Like we hear that thing.
Absolutely.
And coming together. But it's I think it's more the fact that they come back quite renewed from their pilgrimages.
Yeah, and I think for you guys that must be very affirming that they're hearing that over there, and then it's definitely happening on the ground, which is really, really cool. So I did want to ask you as well, Emma, we heard the announcement of Archbishop Markle retiring earlier this year, which was after he released his response to the synodal process, because after we did all of our writing and all of the voting happened, it then went to him, and he produced his own document in response to everything. And there was these little stars about what he sort of thought was important. So I just wanted you to, sort of break down what was his response to everything that happened.
So, he observed. He wasn't allowed to vote, which I found interesting during the synodal process. He just sat in a table in the corner and observed, and he's so quick. He just took in all the information. It was interesting to see how the conversations that happened in the room were reflected in the things that he adjusted, because he did make quite a few adjustments. We had 3 major areas, and he added a couple of extras, but it was mainly from the discussions he'd heard. And emphasis he'd added there about intergenerational initiatives, He put in another thing about having a structure by which deaneries were, coordinating their ministry, which there was a few things he put in, as well as the stars. So the stars, he had a system where he put 3 stars next to the things that were urgent, 2 stars, less, and then 1 star, the least urgent. And it's interesting that I've heard from Archbishop Shane that in some respects he's going to stick to that same star emphasis. But it was only seen as it's only just a few little stars on a page. It's not the be and end all. We are still able to action some of the others. Like there's one there about auditing that I know we're going to get into because we have to. But so, and in some respects, the things he emphasized were the things that we originally started as our major criteria point, which was ministry, formation. And what's come apparent through, he put in emphasis on liturgy, but that's actually being really resonated throughout. Some of the consultation post-synod, people saying this is where we want what helps. And, it's when our first action is really happening from the synod.
Yeah, and I think that was really great timing for us as well, because the Mass of Creation, have I got that right, that got released earlier this year. So I think I remember reading that and be like, oh yes, that's really great for all the synod stuff, because it just gives us an extra thing that we could be promoting and sharing and that people can be tapping into. So that was really cool. And I do remember you and I kind of knew that was coming when we were talking about liturgy. So yeah, glad that followed on very quickly afterwards. And I think some of the parishes have even already started to use that Mass.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that was really cool. So we're now, so Archbishop Mark released his document, and now this year we've moved into the implementation phase. So what do you think are your key focus points? What are you looking forward to? What are other people already jumping on board with?
I think for me, and actually I probably should have tacked this on to when we were talking about the Archbishop, the fact that he's so involved means that he's got buy-in. So he's really, and people know that he's really strong on these issues, and that I can see the energy that generates right throughout. So, we've had a Laudato Si Action Plan, and and we've got we've really been proactive, especially the second time round, of getting lots of buy-in, doing lots of consulting, lots of, making sure that all the executive directors sign in and are involved. But since the synod's come along, we're getting far more emphasis placed on this. And and there's a little part of me that's going, I had a plan. Like, why didn't you hear me then? But it just takes a synod to wake up some people. So so that's actually really exciting. We've had some implementation workshops run just by the synod crew, and Decree 8, there was all sorts of people saying that they were interested in doing workshops, which have never voiced that before. But now it's the synod, they're getting involved. So that's especially in middle management, in organisations that are not strictly in the Archdiocese, so things like Vinnies, Rosies, congregations, they're saying, no, we want to be part of this too, and sharing resources, where our Laudato Si Action Plan didn't include that as much. We were just for our own agencies. So that's probably one of the key implementations. I've had people reaching out. So we're going to have a meeting in the new year where it's all those kind of agencies and look at some of the mechanics of, like fleet, energy, procurement, some of those big ticket items in the different agency organisations, not agencies, organisations. So Vinnies, outreach centres, and how they can be doing that well and use that information. So the synod has generated that kind of discussion. We had just last week, we had an implementation workshop for parishes, and you were there, Alice. And and there were some creative ideas coming out of that, because again, we're using conversations in the spirit to really hear each other. I can't stress how fruitful those kind of conversations can be, because chatters like me shut up and listen, and it's surprising what comes out. People, the quiet people in the room get a voice and come out with the most astounding thing, and you get the room to think. between when people are speaking, which generates more. That's what I've noticed is the creativity that come out of those sessions. And there's more actionable items. So yeah, we're looking at things like, I'm getting together a liturgy group after our meeting. I don't know, you're probably not aware of this, Alex, but people have come to me and said, yes, I'll be part of a liturgy group and we will create new resources.
So good.
That, we're going to really try and find some practical resources to give to parishes for auditing. We were talking about, and I'm going to, my notes here, but an intranet portal for sharing.
Yes.
And tracking and sharing information on that auditing process. That was another idea that came out of it. And also the emphasis on clear communication and intergeneration. There was all sorts of things. So we're also going to have another group meeting on the formators. So people like yourself and myself, but people in different congregations, people in BCE, the Ignatian community, like a variety of people who do the formation, so we can have a strategic approach. And a synod enables that much more so than a plan. I don't know how, but it just does.
Which for me, I don't know, because in seeing how you went about the rewrite of the Laudato Si Action Plan, when you got to the second iteration, like I thought at the time you were doing such a great job with consulting with so many different people and lots of different voices then. And yeah, you're right. And then suddenly the synod comes along, and it's I mean, not that you were doing the conversations in the spirit specifically with those groups, but you were, reaching out to the people who didn't always have a voice. And then the synod comes along and changes everything again. But yeah, it was. I think that was a real strength of the Brisbane Laudato Si Action Plan as it was that it was consultative. It did talk to not just one particular group. It was it had lots of different voices along the way.
I think it's the gravitas of it, because it's so obvious in its consultation. It's such a big event. And it gets all the different levels involved. So, from the Archbishop right down to kids, but all the middle management, like it has more gravitas. And it enables you to do your Laudato Si Action Plan. Like I've got more action there now because of the synod. The two feed off each other. So that's helpful.
I think Mary's just asked a question about how parish councils fit in the synod process. And I think what was made very clear when we were going through the synod as an archdiocese was that every parish can be doing it themselves. And they can take the conversations in the spirit and reflect on what had come out of the bigger synod, and what's going to be relevant to them. And I feel like that's what's happened with some of our decree, and that's why some groups are, going on this Laudato Si Action planning. They've sort of kickstarted that journey as well. Oh,
absolutely. There's been, like this year, because of the synod, there's been an uptake where we only had a few parishes. We've now got 15 with plans or drafts of plans. And that's just skyrocketed because of the synod. Also, like my own personal parish has a synod team. So they've it's got nothing to do with me. I had to ask to join, which seemed a bit ridiculous, but the parish priest sort of forgets that I do synod stuff. And I'm like, hey, I could be part of this. But he tapped someone else on the shoulder and said, listen, I want a team in this parish to discuss how we can implement the synod in our parish. And that's how parishes are approached. I think they've been asked to do this. I think because my parish priest wasn't the first person to be sticking his hand up for that kind of work. He was like, he was a little nervous about it all. And but I think they got nudged to say, no, you need to be doing this in your parishes. And that means we're still very much in our infancy as a group, but they're looking at explaining the culture of synodality so that the parish can understand. A lot of people don't get it. So we're trying to explain the culture of it and then hold our own conversations in the spirit in the parish to hear what they want to concentrate on. Because you can't do all the decrees in one parish. We've got to do a listening to hear, okay, which areas are we going to focus on first? It's a long-term plan. It's a 5-year plan. What are we going to do first? Now, I've got to try and bite my lip and not say loudly, but I've got to listen.
Yeah.
let them, work out what it is in their parish that they really will get behind and get moving on.
Yeah, and I also think that even though the parish councils are probably a great starting point for that process to begin, I think what came out of our implementation workshop the other day was that it doesn't have to be that either. It could be other people. There could be a working group, or there could be, if there is one part of the synod that people are really keen on, like to create, they can be starting their own committee and doing that themselves. So parish councils definitely have a role, but it's not necessarily, the be all and end all. Like, all the pressure's not on them. It's
No.
I think that was definitely something that came out the other day, was that this is everyone's thing. That's the sort of thing. Yeah. So we've also got a question here from Karen about the implementation workshops. So in line with the implementation workshops for parishes, is there a platform for youth, particularly engagement with their respective parishes? That's a good question.
Yes. So yes, I know that Steph, maybe a month ago, she did a great intergenerational one. So they had retirees and teenagers all together, where they did a synodal process and a real listening, and that was fascinating. Steph is an old teacher, so she is very keen on getting that youth voice heard and making them feel heard, and exploring this synodal process, that they're well trained in it. So when they become adults, it's like, that's just second nature.
And Barbara's just asked as well, explain what conversations in the spirit are. How do they work, Emma?
No, that's all right. So when you do a conversation in the spirit, and I think it's been shown in other disguises in the past, but a conversation in the spirit is you start with prayer. You've been given a resource or a question, and you start with prayer. So you can have it. The timing depends on how much time you've got overall, but usually about a couple of minutes to pray with a question in mind or a stimulus in mind. Then you have groups of at most 6 to 8. 8's a bit much, 6 is preferable. And you take 2 minutes each to say what you heard in your prayer. So in that 2 minutes of prayer, what spoke to you? And you have 2 minutes to discuss that. No one can interrupt you. They must listen. They can nod, smile, or frown, or whatever they want to do. But the idea is you don't interrupt. And it's timed. It's really quite, it's funny because the timer goes off and you got to stop. And then you go to the next person and they do their 2 minutes. You go around. Then there's silence again. You pray. You don't discuss. You pray. So you have another 2 minutes of prayer. And in that prayer, you're asking the question, what is this? What is moving? What spirit is moving for me when I hear all this? What am I hearing? And so then after those 2 minutes, do you reflect on what the spirit helped you hear? So you can't reiterate what you were just talking about. You can't go back to it. You've got to actually reply. In Alice, I heard her. I was really touched by when she said this. Bob, when you said that, I really heard this. And that's so you're isolating what you heard and what resonated with you without saying too much about yourself. So you go around, you have your 2 minutes again, each, no one interrupting, you just have your moment. Then you do prayer again and you reflect. And then you have usually a general discussion for about 5 minutes where you can reply, ask questions. And you will find you record, there'll be someone in the group that's recording the themes that are arising from all of this. And they just arise, they just do, it works. And you find that there's key things that people are really, because in that interim bit where you're talking about what you've listened, key things people say, yes, that resonated with me as well because of this and this and this reason. And you will get some key themes. And someone will record those down without saying who the names of the people are. And that's usually passed on to the people organising. So you don't report, they just have those written notes about the key themes. Did I cover it, Alice?
Yeah, I think you got it. And I think David's put some resources in the chat which talk about Synod, which I imagine would have that process in there as well. And the other book that I showed earlier, which I put down, here it is. There's also it goes through that process in there as well. So most Synod resources, there was another book we got given I don't know if I have it with me.
Yeah.
There was one we got given when we started it, and that was a really good one actually. And it had just like step by step. Here's part phase 1, phase 2, or whatever it was. To go through that. So
I wonder whether it's on that Synod website that I shared.
it probably is. Yeah. That one's probably in that, because we had training about that whole process. Like that was what the beginning parts were, was so that everyone kind of had to know what they were getting into, because you can't have someone dominating the conversation. That's really not allowed. Like it's very much about that listening. And it's I also quite like as part of it, it also, I think, reflects a lot of our First Nations wisdom on listening as well, which is really, really important. There's a nice connection in that, and listening to nature in that part. I know we had at one point we were sort of sitting down and saying, well, how do we listen to nature as part of the synod? What is because the Archdiocese is not just the people, it's the buildings and it's the land and it's the waterways that are around us. And we were really trying to think about, how do we include those voices that don't actually have a voice? How do we listen to the lorikeet and, the whale, who are part of our Archdiocese as well, but just can't physically be present. So that was, not that we necessarily landed on anything as part of that, and how we were going to do that, but it was in the back of our minds of all times of what would these other beings be saying if they were present in the conversation, which was hugely important.
Absolutely.
So I just want to return back to this idea of the synodal process, or even using the conversations in the spirit process, which is part of it, when it comes to Laudato Si and implementing the 7 Laudato Si goals. So how do you see that connecting?
I think the good thing about the 7 Laudato Si goals is that it's a universal language. So as soon as you start structuring your thing around that, you can talk to any country, anywhere, any place, and we know what we're talking about. So it has that universal language, which is really helpful. And it's quite, it's quite broad and inclusive of all the different elements of Laudato Si. Using it as a structure for synodality, we didn't really put it in the structure, Alice, but
no,
we didn't. But at the same time, we both had really deep knowledge. We worked with those goals, in our career. So where do you see the mix?
I think it's more like, for the process of working with the goals and developing a plan, you can employ a synodal process within a parish or within a school to be able to come up with a plan. I think that's kind of my opinion, is that if you, for example, have a committee of students at a school who all, especially the ones that are really passionate and they all have lots of really, really great ideas, but you might have one kid who's just sitting there, who's not really, interacting, but is thinking a lot. And using that synodal process can help to bring out what it is that they know. So I think it's really valuable. It can be a really valuable sort of thing. It also means that when you're getting to really challenging conversations, say with, for me, normally my experience is staff can be quite challenging when it comes to working with Laudato Si. But if, you're, say, for example, you have a draft of a Laudato Si Action Plan for the school, and you've got a staff meeting, they can all be given parts of the plan and then have a conversation in the spirit to see, okay, well, what are people thinking about this, and what's speaking to them, and what can they then be doing, that's inspired by the plan, or what's challenging them, what do they feel is unachievable. So all of that can come out using that dialoguing, listening, the conversations process. And I think,
actually, can I add something there?
Yeah.
I think the difference between the discussions I did before doing the plan and before the synod, because I used to see people individually and get their ideas, where with the synod, because you're meeting as a group, you're hearing a variety of opinions, and that is ripe for getting understanding and seeing the challenges. It provided far more cross-fertilization between areas, and hence I think we've got more momentum. There was more, it's like it's okay for me to hear everything, but for them to hear each other was really powerful. So I think that's one of the big pluses in that synodal process for doing a Laudato Si Action Plan. Now that I'm doing my new work, the two are just married in because we're doing both.
Yes. Yeah. And I think Mary's just added it on a similar thing. She said, I think this synodal method and the Laudato Si resources mentioned is a way to engage young people in schools with the Catholic curriculum and keep them involved. Yes. Yeah. Rather than them losing them from the faith once they finish school. Absolutely. As like a ministry, that was I think a highlight for me in talking about at the implementation workshop, the ministry and now it's not, is it apostolate? That word that we couldn't get. Opposite? Being an apostle. That Father Joe, Father Joe was mentioning how, when we go to church, we can be ministers to creation by, people bringing their recycling and stuff. But then when we step outside, we want that formation to be able to go out. And what do we do? For me, that means I do bush care, and that's for kids, how do we continue in their faith development and their outreach and all that sort of stuff. So that was really cool. Yes, and Karen, yes, we agree. Schools and parishes should be aligned. Have you seen any instances of that, Emma, where the school and parishes are,
Yeah, well, I think I'm thinking of Zilmere. I don't know if you had much to do with Zilmere, but the parish has their own Laudato Si Action Plan, and the school are developing their Laudato Si Action Plan. I've got a meeting with them this week. They're right at the end. But in writing that, I'm like, but at least in the school when they're saying we need to work with the parish, I'm like, yeah.
And then the parish will write one. They'll say we need to work with the school.
But it is so important. It's just such an area of connection between the generations. I know my own parish, I actually would say Laudato Si is the one area where we do really connect with the school. We have a Care for Creation group and we have a Laudato Si group within the school. And they do that really well. So even the space between the building of the church and the school has now become this reconciliation garden and Laudato Si space, which is really beautiful. It is such a ripe area for this. And to have those discussions in the spirit would just ripen it. We're not quite there yet with my own little parish, but it's certainly possible.
Yeah, I think we've all got big visions. I'm conscious David's just turned his camera back on, which means we've probably got about 5 minutes left, if that. So if there are any, I guess, really burning, urgent last questions that want to come through in the chat, or Emma, anything else that you really wanted to mention before we close up? Any last comments?
I just highly recommend. Like my plan is not perfect. It is an evolving plan, like everyone's plan. But have a look. I know that David shared on the chat the areas of the plan, and I'd also highly recommend the Justice and Peace Commission. So the Catholic Justice and Peace Commission has a blog that we have all sorts of resources that we put on there about integral ecology and links to other organizations, the Laudato Si movement, those kinds of things. But like Caritas put out such a beautiful resource today.
They did, it's awesome.
About rising tide, rising debt.
That would probably be it.
So I was trying to remember the title of it. But so those are really good places that we try and share. And I'm always open to people ringing. I was speaking to Western Australia today. Like if you want to ring and ask about what it's like to write a plan, or whether it be a parish or a school or diocese, I'm open to that as well. I think I learn as much as I try and share.
I think the great thing about working in this space within, I guess, the ecosystem of the Catholic Church in Australia is, especially on ecology, if you know someone, they can get you to know other people. Like it's a huge network that is already very well established. People know everyone. People can help and are very willing to help as well. So reaching out is really, really important, especially for people who are who are starting out and don't know what to do and where to go and where to start and what's there and available, because there's a whole world of things and resources and people who've been doing it for 30, 40, 50, like all that sort of years. So yeah, wonderful. David, shall we hand back over to you? I don't think we've had any other questions come through the chat.
No, certainly. Thank you very much, Alice. Thank you very much, Emma. The one thing that Spirit I heard from the Spirit tonight is that synodality can lead to wonderful opportunities for our church. There's a lot of skepticism about synodality, and there are a number of people who are frustrated by some of the church not necessarily embracing synodality, and I'd show them tonight's video because and send them to Emma.
Yeah, yes.
Sorry, Emma. Right? But fundamentally, the synodal path can lead to great outcomes. Sure, we're not there, and we're on a journey. And Emma mentioned that nothing's perfect, and we've got to continue to enhance what we do. But if you do question whether or not the synodal path can lead to benefit, tonight and the discussion tonight will irrefutably challenge that doubt.
Yeah.
So that's what I heard from the Spirit tonight, Emma. So thank you, Alice. Thank you, Emma. That's
Thank you, Emma.
Wonderful. Just to reinforce, there's been some references to a lot of wonderful resources. I've mentioned some of Garrett's own resources. We've got a wealth of stuff on synodality and ecology and so forth. And Emma and Alice have referred to others. We will make sure that the video email that we send to all registrants next week have those links and a summary of some of the chat tonight that's relevant. So if you fear that you might have missed something and you were quickly trying to jot down any notes or the like, don't fret. We will send them out to you as well. So I very much appreciate all who join us tonight. We've had 4 of these sessions now, Alice, and around 2,000 people have joined us over those sessions. And one thing that does, that I have the opportunity to talk to a number of teachers right around the country. I get the opportunity from time to time to visit the classrooms and talk to students. And one heartening thing is that their link and their concern about our environment and our interconnectedness is paramount to them. And the more we can do as a church to show that there is beauty in the faith and it can make a difference, I think is something that's so urgent. And Emma, you mentioned your small stature, but from tonight, I honestly think you're a giant in this field. Did you think I was going to say that, Alice? It looks like you almost knew.
No, I have the same opinion.
You're a font of knowledge and a giant in this space. It is absolutely amazing, and I congratulate you. So, I mean, I know that doesn't mean much, but I'm very grateful for the work that you do because it will enhance our common home.
Yeah.
Better.
Yeah. Well, thank you. That's very, very sweet. We're all just people trying. I'm very aware that I'm part of a very large community of people trying, and any way we can support each other to get this thing moved along, all the better.
And and there's hundreds of people who have joined us tonight who feel the same way, and that's why they've joined us. And so, on behalf of all of those people, because not all of them can tell you, Emma, but thank you so much for tonight. It was riveting. It was great. It was fantastic, and it's so encouraging. So, thank you. And Alice, your commitment to these sessions have been just outstanding, and on behalf of Garrett and all the people who have joined us over the last 4 webinars, thank you so much. And
Thanks.
like Emma, the work that you're doing uh, previously at Caritas and Catholic Earth Care, or what was Catholic Earth Care, and now at Edmund Rice, and no doubt other work that you haven't mentioned as well. So we're very grateful, very appreciative, and thank you very much.
Thanks.
Uh, I am going to close the webinar. We've run a couple minutes over. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. And I'm sure that for those of you who are interested, we are running Advent talks from next week for 4 weeks with the team at Yarra Theological College, or Union rather, and they can also be accredited. So we'd warmly welcome you to join those sessions. I was saying before, I felt like we just finished Lent and we're into Advent now. So the year goes by so quickly, which means the urgency that we have to act on caring for our common home is even more urgent. So thank you, everybody, for tonight. We look forward to seeing you again. I hope you can join us at the next series of webinars, whatever they may be. Thank you very much for your support, for Emma's work, for Alice's work, and your support for Garrett Publishing. We're a small ministry. We've got a very big mission, and we appreciate all the support that you can offer. God bless. Have a great night. Thank you.
Thanks, David. Thank you, Emma.